Israel's parliament just banned UNRWA from working in Israel or Gaza and has instead called it a terror organisation. How can the UK continue to allow Israel to stop letting aid get to the desperate people of Gaza? Now, the Knesset has tonight banned the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees from being able to conduct any activities on Israeli soil, and has also voted to cut ties with UNRWA and designate it a terror organisation. These bills are due to come into effect in 2 to 3 months' time. Pippa.
This is such hard news to hear, really. I think, the situation in the region is a tinderbox, close to what really could become an all-out war in the region. And so we really need to call on all sides to de-escalate, both to reach a negotiated settlement, but also to get that humanitarian aid in. Now, hearing this about UNRWA, which is the aid agencies, the only way they were being able to get into Gaza and the Western Strip was because they were coming through Israel, because they'd stopped the entrances that they did have straight into the Gaza Strip. So they were then channeled through Israel, and now they're saying they cannot come through the Israeli territory, the Israeli country. So we know that we are on the brink of the worst humanitarian crisis we have ever known, with millions of people displaced. If you think about the situation for many women and children, we've just heard that getting the polio vaccination out to children who are 6 years old has not been able to be taken place. That will affect, in the future, just hundreds of thousands of young people's lives. We know that women are not getting access to any medical care. That's either, medical care if they're pregnant, that's postnatal care, even if they're suffering from problems, any kind of health care. Now, we, on behalf of our constituents as MPs, we have the privilege and the opportunity to meet people directly. And just this afternoon, I met with a group of both Israeli and Palestinian people. The Israeli...
I'm going to have to ask you to rush because I'm conscious of time.
Okay, so just want to say, both Israeli and Palestinian people that we met today told us harrowing stories of what is happening, both in terms of the hostages and in terms of the persecution and the terrible humanitarian crisis in Palestine. Both groups said that the only way, one, to get the hostages home, and two, to bring peace to the area, is for humanitarian aid to get through now and for a peace settlement.
Okay. David Goodhart, part of the problem here isn't it, that presumably part of the reason why Israel's done this is because there were UNRWA employees involved in the planning of the October the 7th attacks?
Well, exactly. I was going to say, they haven't banned them just for the sake of it. They haven't banned them for fun. They banned them because they obviously have evidence that UNRWA has been, attacking them. The question is, how does the aid get in through other routes? And, you come back to this question the whole time, what are the neighbouring Arab states doing to help provide the people of Gaza with support of various kinds? And are the Israelis stopping that? Or, why are they not stepping up? That's what I'd really like to know. And of course, all of this, I have to say, whenever this issue comes up, you have to say, what an appalling mistake the Iraq War was. All of this goes back to the Iraq War. If we hadn't had the Iraq War, if Iraq hadn't been destroyed and become essentially a client state of Iran, Iran would not have been strengthened. Iran's allies, Hezbollah and Hamas, would not have had we could have gone through the process of normalising Israel. Saudi Arabia was very close to it. It's just the dreadful mistake that we're still living with the consequences of the Iraq.
Sarah?
It's just really difficult, isn't it? And when to use the phrase "we're living with the consequences," the consequences of people of Gaza and what they face. And I heard that it would take 15 years just to clear the rubble, even if the fighting stopped tomorrow, before you even start thinking about the rebuild. And that's completely not taking into account the actual rebuilding of people's lives and the amount of trauma that they're going through right now, which is just totally unimaginable. I think what's important, the minister worked with international colleagues over the weekend to bring forward a statement, underlining our commitment to UNRWA and once again calling upon Israel to make sure that aid does get through. And we've got to use every bit of our diplomatic efforts to continue to push on that, whilst doing all that we can to try and de-escalate and find some way through here. It just is so incredibly difficult.
Craig?
Yeah, well, it wasn't very many months ago that the British government actually agreed with Knesset. We had sort of denied funding to UNRWA because of the concerns that it was embedded within the Hamas organisation. It's changed under this government. I'm sure the aid will get through other ways. UNRWA was not the only aid provider. But let's not forget. I mean,
if we haven't seen it get through so far.
The Knesset is the head of a democratic country called Israel. There are no other democratic countries in that region. And at any time, any day that you fancy, Gaza and Hamas could release the hostages, and that would be a step forward towards the negotiation of a settlement and a ceasefire. They do not do so, and one has to wonder why. I mean, on this, yes, of course we don't like to see at all women and children and innocents being dragged into this war, but I'm afraid that is the nature of war, sadly.
That's why I have humanitarian rules, actually, and we do know that there's evidence of going against humanitarian rules.
It wasn't the Israelis who came over the border and murdered thousands,
but now it's
1,200
war, and there
Israelis.
are humanitarian rules of war.